Hey guys, welcome back to the American Tribune Live. I am Todd Peterson. It is good to be back in studio. Family took a vacation last week, some much needed R&R, but good to be back. If you watch the videos, I was doing recordings out of the car, hotel rooms. I was everywhere. It was everything. It was not convenient at all, but we had a great time. But we got some breaking news stories, folks, as we dive into the exact subject we're talking about today. Sounds like, and I'm just on Twitter right now, formerly Twitter, now X. I don't know. I don't know about you. It's always going to be Twitter for me. It's just, it rolls off the tongue. Breaking news that the hush money case against Donald Trump has been adjourned, just like everything else against Donald Trump. Oh, he's a convicted felon. Oh, look, he paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 illegally somehow, because we've never had NDAs and hush money agreements between rich and powerful men before. He was the first one ever, and it was bad because it was right before the election. That is getting tossed out, just like Jack Smith announced he would unwind and roll down the two cases that he was overseeing related to Mar-a-Lago. Remember those nuclear secrets, and he was going to sell them to the Russians and Iranians, apparently. Fani Willis's case has blown up. They are all falling apart, but it's the Stormy Daniels case specifically that ties in perfectly to our show today, because that's what we're talking about. Dems only have one play, and that's to accuse you of sexual misconduct. They can't beat you with ideas. They can't beat you at the ballot box. That's why they don't want voter IDs. They want to cheat. They cannot beat us, period. So they have to slander, smear, libel. They have to say all these salacious things about you, get people revved up with their emotions, because the Democrat voting base votes on emotions. That's all they live with, their emotions. They can't think rationally or logically or even wonder like, there seems to be a pattern. They have gone after Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump, Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh. They all say the same thing. After decades after the alleged misconduct took place, now that they're going to be appointed to the Supreme Court, or now that they've been nominated to be part of Trump's cabinet, or if they're Donald Trump himself, I'm going to sit on this for decades, and then I'm going to release this right before the election or right before their confirmation hearing. Doesn't it make you scratch your head a little bit? Like, isn't the timing off? You could look at any one of these people. Donald Trump's the easiest one. Brett Kavanaugh might be the most infamous one. You've got people in place for decades. They've had entire careers built. You never said a word. And then right before something momentous was going to happen that was going to hurt the establishment, hurt the Democrat Party, then suddenly these witnesses come out of the woodwork. It is absolutely insane. But like I said, we got breaking news here. It looks like that hush money case is going to disappear, as we all knew it would. The election is over. The lies didn't work. And so now they can slowly and quietly get rid of them. But never forget, they will accuse you of the most heinous things in the moment to make sure that you lose, to make sure they can try to maintain their grasp on power. But folks, I want to welcome you to the show. We got some audience members coming in. We are live. If you're watching us on Rumble, go ahead and drop some comments in the chat. If you're watching us on our Twitter stream, go ahead and drop a comment in there as well. And we do stream on YouTube just for fun. We don't have a large YouTube following, but we're over there. We're going to see how long the account survives. Things we talk about, YouTube will not like. That is why we do not stream on Facebook as of right now. Can't be too careful with Facebook. That's where we make all of our money, on the other properties. So you can always find the things that the American Tribune is doing over on Facebook. We got like 15 pages, tens of millions of followers, but we're not going to stream on Facebook right now, because when you expose the media, when you expose the establishment, the political class, the elites in this country, big tech does not like that. So we're on free speech platforms, Rumble and X right now. But thanks for joining the show. We have a lot to get into. None of this is necessarily new, but it felt like a good time to recap that, because as Donald Trump keeps winning, he's getting the cases dismissed, and he's nominating some very good people to his cabinet. Matt Gaetz is Attorney General. Pete Hegseth is Secretary of Defense. You are seeing all sorts of stories come out about them. And again, weird, right? Weird timing that all this is surfacing right as they're about to be nominated and destroy the Department of Defense, destroy the Department of Justice. The power, the ruling class, the establishment, they are terrified, and this is their last resort. This is what they do when they see their power going away, and when they see accountability heading nowhere, and that is equally important to understand. They know heads are going to roll. We've got no particular order to take this today. The Pete Hegseth story, I wanted to just go through that one really fast. So Pete Hegseth, Fox News commentator, analyst, guest, host. He's been on Fox News for several years now. Served 20 years in the military. Worth repeating that he has been in the public eye for a long time. And now you're hearing stories circulate that, oh no, there was a sexual misconduct. There was the R word going around. I'm going to debunk that right now. We'll get through that story pretty fast. Then we got to talk about Gaetz. We got to talk about these Trump stories some more. I want to flash back to Kavanaugh and Thomas because once they saw the power in sexual allegations, sexual assault, misconduct allegations, unfounded, no truth, but they saw how powerful it was for their base, for their fundraising, just to demoralize people. I've got a clip of Tucker Carlson talking about Brett Kavanaugh. He has never been the same. You look at some of his rulings in the Supreme Court. Here you thought you had a staunch conservative ally on the Supreme Court, and he's been a little wishy-washy. Tucker makes the case that the hearings utterly destroyed him. And to some extent, he is absolutely right. His family was never the same. Imagine dragging your wife and your kids through all the evil things that they did, led by, of course, Kamala Harris at the time. So we've got a clip of Kamala Harris grilling him. It was just a disgusting display from Harris. But let's talk about Pete Hegseth here. I'm going to read from NPR. So he is 44 now. He's denied the woman's allegations. And again, the allegations specifically are that it was not consensual. So Hegseth did agree. He admitted that in 2017, there was a relationship, a one-night stand with a woman. He was staying in some hotel. This woman was with her husband at the time. What does that say about her? And then they were both drinking at the hotel bar, end up going to a hotel room. Things happen. And then a couple of days later, she went to the police. I'm going to upset a lot of people by saying this. Regret is not rape. This woman might have been intoxicated, no doubt. That doesn't make it rape. She willfully walked up to the hotel room with Pete Hegseth. They had their night together. A couple days later, husband probably found out. She's feeling bad about it. She realizes who it is. Wait a minute, this guy is prominent. This guy's got money. Maybe I can do something. This is the height of the Me Too movement. Remember, 2017, you got Me Too everywhere. And as Pete Hegseth was working at Fox, remember, we've got Carlson's story coming out, Bill O'Reilly, Eric Bolling, a couple other prominent names, Roger Ailes, who was in charge of Fox News. They were all dealing with, I don't want to say substantiated, but it seemed pretty founded that some of the guys, some of the culture at Fox News was not on the up and up. Pete Hegseth was filing for divorce at the time. He was having a baby with his current wife. I am not making any moral judgments on people. As far as I'm concerned, I've gone on record. I've been consistent about this. I do not care about their personal lives. Whatever Donald Trump did in the past with women, whatever Pete Hegseth has done in the past with women, that is immaterial to the job they will perform that I elected them for. I want Donald Trump to be an America First president. I want Pete Hegseth to go roll heads at the Department of Defense. If they had their personal issues in the past, if they did things that we would look down upon, that's not why they're in that position. I'm not voting for a friend. I'm not voting for a family member. I'm not voting for the most perfect example of a human being that does not sin. We are all sinners. They have one job to do when they go in there. And to be clear, they are not the only ones that do this. Congress has a slush fund with your tax dollars to pay off all sorts of people for all sorts of things. Your tax dollars keep people quiet if congressmen, bureaucrats do unsavory things as well. This is rampant in Washington, D.C., and we can pick on Republicans. I think MTG, I think Lauren Boebert, and I don't know for sure, but I would maybe guess that Nancy Mace, other prominent women in Congress, have all left their husbands, and we all know why, because they're sleeping around. Like, this is the culture in Washington, D.C. So no, it is not just Trump people. It is all politicians because they get a taste of power. They get a taste of fame. Everyone knows who they are. They get a little more attention from members of the opposite sex, or in some cases, if you're a Democrat, the same sex. So this is just par for the course. So if you want to say, oh, Pete Hegseth, he's not qualified because he had an affair or a one-night stand, or, oh, Donald Trump, he had sex with a prostitute, they're all doing it. So that is not an argument to say, I want someone that's better. That's not befitting of the president or befitting of a cabinet member to go out and do these things. They all do it. That's why we want the federal government as small as possible. All right, so let's read from NPR here. It says, in a statement to the Post, Hegseth's lawyer said that he had been drinking at the hotel bar and was intoxicated when he went to his hotel room with the woman. According to the Post, again, the Washington Post, the memo from the woman's friend said the woman took Hegseth to the room after being informed that he was being a nuisance to other women. Yes, this random woman went out of her way, just being kind and thoughtful. Hey, you're not being nice to these other girls, so I'm going to walk you to your hotel room. What did she think was going to happen? And more accurately, she knew what was going to happen. She knew what she wanted to do. A nuisance to other women, or were you not getting the attention you wanted? So Hegseth doesn't deny the encounter. This woman doesn't deny the encounter. And in fact, quite straightforward in the description of that, I walked him to his room. If there are, let's be clear on this too. Rape is a serious thing. sexual misconduct, sexual assault is a very serious thing, but you're going to see the theme in the show today. You've seen the theme play out in Washington, D.C. They ruin that word just like they have ruined every other word. Racist, white supremacist, Nazi, even at this point. All these words have been diluted and they have no meaning now because the left, the Democrats, the establishment, they throw these words around so casually. If you disagree with me, you're a racist. If you want to deport illegal criminals, you're a xenophobe. These words have no meaning anymore because they've been weaponized so frequently and so often by the left. And same thing now with rape, sexual assault. These words have lost meaning, and it does a huge disservice to people that actually experience these awful. I cannot think of something worse if you are a woman than getting raped by a man. But we ignore real victims of crime when we attach these labels to encounters like this that by all measures, as I'm reading this looks consensual to me. And you know what? This is a message. I have 2 young daughters. I will tell them this every single day as they come of age. If you want to stay safe, do not put yourself in a position that this could happen. Drinking, intoxication, walking a man up into his hotel room, I'm not victim blaming, but you're not being smart and not being safe if you put yourself in this position either. So, the Hegseth story. They want to accuse him of all sorts of things. By all accounts, it would look like a consensual experience. This woman was drunk. He was drunk. He's admitted it. There is no story here about assault as far as I am concerned. And again, you got to ask, where have you been for the last 7 years, lady? They don't give us a name. They give us some initials for her, it looks like. She was 30 at the time. He was late 30s, it looks like. They hate him because he's going to do great things in the Department of Defense. That is all this is. So that's the Pete Hegseth story. Now we all know it. It happened. He's not denying it. She's not denying it. They want to fabricate a story, though. They're trying to attach these slanderous labels to him. Oh, look at that, sexual assaulter. Not the case as far as I am reading it. All right, let me just check the comments really fast here. And then we need to move on. We got to talk about the Matt Gaetz story, too. I've got a couple articles from the Federalist that we can read as well. Let me pull those up here. We have a lot of tabs open. This is what happens when you are live. We got to find the right article again. So the Matt Gaetz story, and I hope Dad's watching. My dad watches the show on Rumble. I want him to comment on Rumble. I get text messages from my dad when he's watching the show here. I was talking to him, and I think this is a common sentiment about Matt Gaetz because we've all heard these stories. They've been circulating for a couple years now. This is not necessarily a new story, a new attack on Gaetz. I think at least for the last couple of years since 2021, we've all heard that Matt Gaetz had sex with a minor. He's an awful person. Can you imagine someone in Congress? He got reelected. He had sex with a minor. So that's the story that we hear. And again, it's a lot easier to tell the lie and have it believed than go back in time and debunk the lie and convince people that they have been lied to. So when people hear that name Matt Gaetz, and especially people on the left or people that are not supportive of the America First movement necessarily, they accuse Donald Trump of causing division in the country. And if only Donald Trump went away and we could go back to having rhinos sell us out and everyone was just happier and nicer to each other in Washington, D.C. Never mind that we kept having endless foreign wars. Never mind that inflation kept stealing your money. Never mind that everything else was going sideways in this country, but at least the news wasn't yelling about Donald Trump. And it was such a better time in America as you continue to lose your freedoms. So people that don't like Donald Trump because they bought the media lie that he's the one causing the division rather than the one that exposed the division and is the target of so much hate and assassinations. Matt Gaetz, that's what you know about him. The problem is he's been investigated by the FBI and the DOJ. And you know what they found out? They discovered that the witnesses making these claims lacked credibility. Imagine that. But we're going to hear the stories again and again now that he's nominated to be Attorney General and clean house and hold these people accountable. These demons, literal demons, they are evil. They're not just wrong. They're not just liars. That's bad enough. They are demons in the society. They do the worst things behind the scenes. They actively try to ruin your life, Americans' lives. We have people still in prison from January 6th. We still have people getting targeted for entering the building on January 6th. If you prayed an abortion center, off to jail for you as well. These people are disgusting, and Matt Gaetz is going to hold them accountable. That's why they don't like this so much. They're trying to bring back up this story. Oh, look at Matt Gaetz, all this sexual misconduct story. I'm going to read from the Federalist here, and here's a synopsis from Molly Hemingway. It says, the two witnesses have massive credibility problems. And when they talk about the two witnesses, There is a man, kind of the ringleader about all this, who has a personal grudge against Matt Gaetz. We'll get to that in a second. And then it is with the alleged minor that this other witness was having sex with. He was having sex with a minor, and he's accusing Matt Gaetz of doing that with the same woman of all people. So the claims arose from Joel Greenberg. Joel Greenberg is, quote, one of the most corrupt Florida politicians of all time, and that's according to someone that works for the anti-Trump media outlet, The Bulwark. So let's just read about him for a second. Among many things the former Seminole County tax collector admitted to as part of a wide-ranging case for which he's currently serving 11 years in prison, Matt Gaetz' accuser is in prison because he's no good, was falsely accusing local political opponent Brian Butte of having sex with a minor, similar to the outlandish claim he made against Gaetz. So already, you better be asking yourself, does this sound believable? He has levied this charge against another political opponent. And by the way, he was the one having sex with a minor. That's not disputed. Greenberg also reportedly later attempted to frame his own attorney with pornographic images of children. This guy is not off to a good start, to say the least. According to the Washington Post, Greenberg admitted to fabricate, now I'm quoting, fabricating allegations against a school teacher who was running against him to be tax collector. Greenberg had sent letters to the school, falsely claiming the teacher had an inappropriate sexual relationship with a student, a similar allegation to the Gaetz case. They're out of ideas. That's the whole point of the show. All they do is they have one play in their playbook. I don't even know if you can call it a playbook at this point. It is just the play. I don't like you. You're a threat. You're my political opponent. I'm going to smear you with these disgusting, despicable allegations. I am on record as well. I'm going to say this right now. Now seems like a good time to fit this in. Whatever the prison sentence would be for having sex with a minor or for raping you, if you levy those false charges, you should face not only that exact prison sentence, but double it. If I were to, I'm not going to use me as an example because I got the deep state listening right now, but let's just say if a person actually rapes, let's just go rapes a minor. Let's do the most heinous thing possible. And they're guilty of that. And the prison sentence is 90 years in prison. If someone accuses you falsely and knowingly of doing that, then they should get 180 years in prison. That is the only way to stop this madness. If you're going to smear someone with these allegations, you better be prepared to do the time when it comes out that you were lying. And now Molly writes with large letters here in a subheading, too ridiculous for even the DOJ. And she did a huge breakdown earlier in this article about the DOJ is awful. And I don't need to go through all that with you. You know that already. But when the DOJ, the weaponized Department of Justice under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when even they can't find credibility to these claims, they're willing to throw every other American in jail. Oh, you looked at the Capitol building from 2 miles away? Boom, off to jail for you. When they can't find anything on Matt Gaetz, you know there is nothing about Matt Gaetz. Yet even the DOJ was unwilling to exploit Greenberg's unsubstantiated claims, apart from leaking them to the press to hurt Gaetz' reputation. They announced their closure of the investigation in 2022. This case has been done for 2 years, for over 2 years. And I do like that they pointed out it was all unsubstantiated. They closed the case, but they still leaked the story to the press so they could have some salacious details, just so that you are reminded that Matt Gaetz had sex with a minor. The House Ethics Committee, however, decided to pick up the dropped and deflated ball and run with it a full year after the DOJ dropped the investigation. The fact that the disgraced Greenberg was cooperating with the House Ethics Committee while in prison was shared for publication with the New York Times and other media outlets. So this is what they do. This guy's in jail. He's already made these accusations. The DOJ is already, we're done with this. But the House Ethics Committee still picked it up a year later and then brought this disgraced witness back that could then be printed by the New York Times, which then cheerleads and kind of runs the show for every other media outlet. Oh, look, the New York Times reported it, so now we'll report it again too. The news media should not be laundering smears from people in prison, a Gaetz spokesman said at the time. He speculated the House Ethics investigation was punishment for his leading role in the controversial defenestration of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So again, what is the motive? Last year at this time, Matt Gaetz was ousting just the complete scumbag rhino Kevin McCarthy. What did he do for 2 years as Speaker? Complete sellout. So Matt Gaetz says, you're out of here. And that's when we saw this come back up. Huh. You mean to tell me that Matt Gaetz was doing something the swamp didn't like, and so now we're going to resurface these complaints? That seems convenient. Just like right now he's going to be Attorney General and make heads roll. That seems convenient. It says he's won few friends on the Hill for also pointing out his colleagues' suspicious stock trade. So Matt Gaetz is one of the good ones. He will call out his own colleagues. He'll call out people in his own party. He does not care about the swamp. He cares about doing what is right for the American people. Therefore, we've got to have these allegations. All right. There's a lot to unpack here because this Gates scheme, it goes back years. All of it is unfounded, but a lot of folks, again, like I said earlier, Matt Gaetz, sex with minor, he must be a bad person. So let's get into a little bit more detail here because, again, you can't make this up. His accuser, the left Marxist playbook, accuse those of what you are doing. This matches word for word in that case. A little notice lawsuit from 2023 gives some insight into Greenberg and two women involved in the scheme against Gaetz. Greenberg alleges one of these women had sex with Gaetz when she was a minor. The crime spree Greenberg was convicted of included charges related to his ongoing sexual relationship with the same 17-year-old. Just to repeat, this guy, Joel Greenberg, was having sex with a minor. He accused someone else that was his political opponent of having sex with a minor, and now he accuses Matt Gaetz of having sex with a minor when he's the one doing all of that. All right, we don't need to read the entire article for you folks, but it also, again, here's additional motive right here. We talked about going after a political opponent. The lawsuit shows that Greenberg became insistent that Gaetz help him obtain a pardon for his various crimes. So now you got this guy, he goes over to Matt Gaetz. I don't like you, but you're in a position of power. Can you help me out? And Gaetz is looking at him like, no, you had sex with a minor. You're a tax cheat. You're a criminal. You're in prison right now. Gaetz said no, and then that is when these charges were levied against Gaetz. He allegedly lied about Gaetz to, quote, reduce his own prison sentence. Two former federal agents interviewed the inmate who told them Greenberg said the woman Greenberg was convicted of having sex with as a minor would be willing to adopt Greenberg's lie in hopes of a future financial benefit. How much of this do we have to read to convince you that all of these stories are a lie? And I'm drawing a blank right now on the account. I think it's something millennial, like the angry millennial or something like that. This guy makes the point that this woman says 2017 seems to be the magic number here, right when Trump's in office too, right? So Hegseth, 2017 encounter. Matt Gaetz, same thing. They're saying that in 2017, before he was elected to the U.S. House of Congress, he was a Florida assemblyman. I don't know what they call him down there. In 2017, apparently, he's at some house party in Orlando and engages in these relationships with the woman. You're telling me, and yes, they've been around for a while, but now she's coming back out in 2024, right as he's nominated. You're telling me you sat on this for 7 years? You want to convince me that you're the good person? He was elected to the House. He's been reelected to the House numerous times. That never bothered you. It never bothered you that he was in these positions. He was going after McCarthy. He was doing all these other things. Not until he was nominated for Attorney General did you decide to come out and then forcefully say that, yes, I'm the woman. This is what happened. You can't do this. I think this is the shortest time frame too, like 7 years. 7 years ago, this bad thing happened because Matt Gaetz is getting too powerful. The motives are off the chart. Financial interest. I hate you because you're my political opponent, and now you're going to be in a position of power. So now I'm going to come out once and for all and say that, yes, this happened. So there is no credibility to this whatsoever. All right, I'm scrolling here just a little bit longer if we have anything else. I think this is relevant. I'm going to read this paragraph as well. The younger woman, the woman that's claiming all this, or the one that Joel Greenberg is claiming that this happened, has gone on to be, quote, an active participant on OnlyFans and has appeared in pornographic videos under a stage name. So, you do you if you're a woman. OnlyFans is disgusting. Participating in pornography is disgusting. If that's how you're going to make your livelihood, it is what it is right now. This is not a normal human being. And again, she's got financial motive to go after him. She's got political motives to go after him. I'm going to read the last paragraph here. This kind of sums up our show as well. As they did with the salacious accusations contained in the Democrat-funded Russia collusion dossier and that was the one where Trump peed on all the Russian prostitutes, and the Washington Post's unsubstantiated report against then federal Judge Brett Kavanaugh, the people who run Washington appear not to be concerned about the validity of the accusations so much as the ability to use them to stop a political opponent. Full stop. That is 100% what is happening here. And boy, when we get into Anita Hill and you talk about being politically motivated, it's going to be fun to go back in time and look at the Clarence Thomas case, the one that really set the stage for all this. That's when they realized they can weaponize sexual assault allegations against anyone they don't like, anyone they're afraid of, just to tarnish their name, ruin their reputation, so on and so forth. So there you go. Pete Hegseth, we debunked that. Matt Gaetz, we debunked that. And actually, we didn't even do that. The Department of Justice, Biden's own DOJ, did that. So we talk about having only one play. I opened the show by saying that Donald Trump, it looks like the hush money case is going to get thrown out. I want to go back in time. This has been covered a lot. We don't need to get into the entire story here, but large overview. Donald Trump was found guilty on 34 separate counts. This is why he's a convicted felon, because he illegally paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 as hush money in the run-up to the 2016 election so that those stories wouldn't hurt his chances in the general. You might be asking yourself, why is hush money such a big deal? Is it illegal to pay a woman to stay quiet? Is it illegal to pay anyone to stay quiet? Is it illegal to sign an NDA? I thought those things happened all the time. And yes, you would be correct. NDAs, hush money, this is par for the course for stuff like this. And as I said earlier, our Congress has its own slush fund to pay off people hush money. And so nothing out of the ordinary there as well. And before we kind of break down the hush money trial more, you might also be asking, didn't Bill Clinton pay hush money to Paula Jones and other accusers of sexual assault? And you'd be correct. I think we can actually share the screen here. This is too good not to just show you as well. So Bill Clinton, here's the claim. This is what Snopes, this is how Snopes frames it up though. So the claim is that Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones hush money in 1998. Yes, that is 100% true, but listen to how the media cover that. Again, Dems only have one play, go after their opponents. When Democrats do it, nothing to see here, and then we'll debunk it all day, even though it's not true. And so Snopes says one of the most prominent figures in the scandal was a woman named Paula Jones. Because remember, Bill Clinton had all sorts of accusers. Feminist Hillary Clinton decided that the Me Too movement didn't apply to her husband and all of the innocent women that he had sexual relationships with. Bill Clinton had interns in the White House. He had other women that he was just going around cheating on Hillary with. Hillary Clinton didn't care. So much for feminism, so much for standing up to victims of sexual misconduct. And again, we'll use the word misconduct for now, but we all know what that means. So here's the claim. In 1998, Clinton agreed to pay Jones $850,000 in order to settle a publicly disclosed lawsuit. And Snopes wants you to think like, well, some people have attempted to draw a comparison between Clinton and Jones' negotiated settlement and hush money payments. Ask yourself this. What would be worse, $850,000 or $130,000? Okay. While the two events might initially appear similar, two former presidents paying money to women with whom they had sexual relations, it's important to acknowledge the full context surrounding the two events. Yes, what is the context? When it's taken into consideration, the two events stop looking similar. Okay, let's see what Snopes says about that. Notice that they're not actually debunking the sum, the figure, the payments. No, that's all true. He paid her off. But the largest and most important difference is that Clinton and Jones mutually reached an out-of-court settlement stipulating that Jones would receive that amount of money. Trump privately arranged his payments in order to keep Daniels from speaking publicly in the first place. Now, I'm not a dumb guy. I think I have reading comprehension abilities that allow me to digest that paragraph and ask some questions. They mutually reached an out-of-court settlement. That sounds private to me. Does that sound private to you? Out-of-court settlement? That means it's not getting decided by the courts. It means it's getting decided by the two parties and their lawyers. And then in the next sentence, so when they talk about Trump, it says Trump privately arranged his payments in order to keep Daniels from speaking publicly. That's the same thing, folks. That's the exact same thing. Snopes is trying to debunk the claim that Clinton paid hush money, even though they basically admit in different words that, nope, they're actually not different. This is exactly the same thing. And yes, you pay people hush money so they don't speak in public. That is the point. Trump's payment to Daniels, made through his lawyer, Michael Cohen, we got more on Michael Cohen in a second too, was a direct financial incentive to get Daniels to sign an NDA saying that she would not talk about the affair. Yep, that's kind of the point. The money was sent to Daniels just before the 2016 presidential election. Again, when you think about motive and timing, these stories always come out right before something big is going to happen. The Hegseth, the Gates, we just talked about that. They're going to get named to Trump's cabinet. And here in 2016, Donald Trump was running for president and was going to dethrone Clinton. He was going to dethrone the entire establishment by winning the presidency. Stormy Daniels had, what was this, a 2006 encounter? 10 years to figure this out, and conveniently waited just weeks before the election to have this story settled. Daniels claimed she was coerced to sign the non-disclosure agreement. Yeah, you would really have to coerce me to take $130,000. It's also important to note that the so-called hush money payments are not necessarily illegal. Oh, imagine that. Snopes says they're not illegal. Trump was not charged with paying hush money. He was charged with falsifying business records in order to hide the payments. What we need to understand about Stormy Daniels is that Donald Trump signed checks out of his personal account to pay off Stormy Daniels. What they wanted to do with him, what Alvin Bragg wanted to do with Trump, is saying this was a campaign-related event. Your campaign needed Stormy to be quiet. Therefore, your campaign should have paid her out. So instead, Donald Trump pays her out of his personal finances, and that's where they found the crime. And yes, found the crime is the right word. They invented the crime out of thin air. Had he paid her off with campaign funds, this isn't an issue. Well, it's still an issue because it's Donald Trump winning the presidency, but they don't have as much legal standing on. But because he paid her privately, that's how they made this entire story up. And I like this because how many people cared about this at the time? So a more apt comparison to Trump's hush money payment to Stormy Daniels would be the case of former Democratic Senator John Edwards. During his presidential campaign in 2008, he took around $1 million from wealthy campaign donors and paid his then mistress, Rael Hunter, to hide the affair. Again, not apples to apples because he used his campaign funds, and they're trying to tell you that's bad. But in the same breath, they're trying to tell you that Donald Trump committed something illegal, committed a felony because he used his private money. Like, none of this lines up. They're desperate. Bill Clinton, John Edwards, if you're a Democrat, you can do whatever you want. Donald Trump, you pay a woman off, suddenly that's a huge scandal. So notice that Snopes tried to say, they tried to say it was false that Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000. They just rated it straight up false. Nothing in this entire story, though, actually debunks it. And again, we kind of focused on this one paragraph here where they decided to settle out of court. And again, I'm asking you, maybe there's some legal viewers watching right now. Is there a difference between settling out of court, which in my mind is private, between the two parties and their lawyers, and Donald Trump doing the exact same thing? Pretty wild stuff. Again, they only have one playbook, and that's just to accuse you of sexual misconduct. I'm afraid of you, sexual misconduct. And let's fast forward. I'm going to get to E. Jean Carroll as well, but here, who remembers Stacey Williams? Stacey Williams had not even 15 minutes of fame in this last election cycle. Again, they tried to break this story. They're trying to revive a story from 1993, apparently. And wouldn't you know, a week or two before the general election this November, she comes out and says something bad happened with Donald Trump. So let's listen to Stacey Williams. She's the former model. She says Trump, Epstein. She gets all the buzzwords in there. And we'll break down her story as well. But this is Stacey Williams, the latest Trump accuser. Then again, the entire story disappeared within a day because nobody believes it anymore. This is what I talked about when I said they watered down all these racism, white supremacy, Nazi, rape. Like, these are important words in our lexicon, but they make them meaningless when they throw it around so much. So here is Stacey Williams, the Trump accuser that did not stick because we're all done with fake news.
Jeffrey looked at me and said, let's go stop by and see Trump. And so we went to Trump Tower and went up.
There's another article, I don't know if I have it, but I think it was The Guardian that actually said this woman, Stacey Williams, had a casual relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
The elevator, and moments later, Trump was greeting us, and he pulled me into him and started groping me. He put his hands all over my breasts, my waist, my butt, and I froze. And I froze because I was so...
I have to choose my words carefully here. Number one, this was 31 years ago. Where was Stacey Williams in 2016? That's when Stormy was taken off. Where was Stacey in 2020 when E. Jean Carroll was hitting the scene? How long did she have to tell this story? Donald Trump was on The Apprentice for a long time, winning awards. He was going around the media circuit. He was everyone's best friend until he ran for president. Again, you can't sit on this for 31 years and then just magically drop a bomb 2 weeks before the election. You're just not credible if you do that. And maybe this did happen. Maybe it did happen. I don't believe that it did, but let's say that it did. Why are you waiting 31 years for, quote, justice? And then the tearing up, again, it's the emotional blackmail. I can't even talk about how his hands were on me. Where have you been this whole time? And then we know that this woman shared this story for the first time on a call, Survivors for Kamala. That was convenient. We know that she was a Democrat operative for a long time. That's convenient. And we know that nothing was sticking about Donald Trump. People still talk about the infamous Access Hollywood tape. That resonates with people out there because, sure, let's put this story ahead of the border, foreign wars, the economy, crime. Let's prioritize his one comment that everybody knows is true, that rich and powerful men have women throwing themselves at them, because that is biology. Men prioritize youth and beauty in women. Women prioritize status, wealth, and power. And so Donald Trump said nothing out of the ordinary. We all understand how human biology works, how human attraction works for members of the opposite sex. But people are still like, oh, I don't like him because he's a womanizer. Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you this, that they all suck. Everybody in Washington, D.C. is a womanizer, if not worse. But sure, it's only Donald Trump that we get upset about because the media just hammered it home every day for 10 years. So this woman is not credible. And notice that when her story was not believed and she disappeared, they kind of just let it go. Stacey Williams' account. Have you heard about Stacey Williams since the election? Where has she been? Where's the media about this? Like, if this actually happened, why aren't you pursuing it? If you can prove it, then prove it. But of course they can't, and that's the point. They're just accusing you of these things, trying to get people riled up. So no, it's not true. I don't believe this at all. And you can fake tears, you can fake cry, you can be coached. So everything you see her displaying, not buying it. But this woman came and went, like I said, within a day. Within 1 day, this story disappeared. And it kind of toes the line of Trump is Hitler, too. I did an episode on this. You can't believe that he's Hitler if you're going to peacefully transition power to him. If you're afraid he will never leave the White House and be a dictator for the rest of his tenure or the rest of his life in America, you don't not cheat in the election. Of course you would cheat to stop Hitler. Of course you would try to assassinate Hitler. And then you don't wish them well afterwards, saying, oh, I just talked to the president-elect, or I'm glad he's okay after that other assassination attempt. Wouldn't want Hitler to be assassinated. Like, that's how you know that's not true. And you know this isn't true when they just let the story disappear. We tried. It didn't stick. We'll just come up with some other sexual misconduct story later on down the road. Because, again, that's all they have. They'll just keep trying that over and over again. So let us talk to the E. Jean Carroll. All right, we're going to close out that tab. E. Jean Carroll, in a nutshell. Trump was found not guilty of raping her. A jury in New York City, where everybody hates Donald Trump, a jury of leftist peers brought by far left DAs, wanted you to think that Donald Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. Nobody found that credible. The jury said no, there is not proof that this happened. And so the case with E. Jean Carroll doesn't stem from that. It stems from the fact that Donald Trump had it with these accusations and said, this woman is insane and this never happened. I don't even know who she is. And that's why he got sued. That's why he has the huge settlement, because they said you defamed her character. Imagine that for a second. Anybody else, if you accused me of rape and I said, no, you're a lunatic, who are you? Would they go after me for defamation? How is it that you can accuse me of rape? One of the worst things a human being can do to another human being. You can say that. This woman can go out there and say, Donald Trump raped me. Nothing happens to her. But then when Donald Trump pushes back and says, hold on a second, this never happened. Who are you, crazy lady? Then he gets sued for defamation of character. That is the E. Jean Carroll story in a nutshell. So take a listen to this. This is from Wikipedia. In November 2022, Carroll filed her second suit against Trump, renewing her claim of defamation. Again, defamation was the leading one, not the claim of battery. She added the claim of battery under Adult Survivors Act later on. Again, New York had to revive this statute. They had to change the law in New York just for Donald Trump, because even if this did happen, E. Jean Carroll never talked about it, never went after Donald Trump. The statute of limitations had expired in this case, and New York allowed it to come back to life just for Donald Trump. The suit went to trial in April of 2023. Evidence included testimony from two friends Carroll spoke to after the alleged incident. I'm going to say alleged incident. Wikipedia just says incident. A photograph of Carroll and Trump in 1987. A jury verdict in May of 2023 found Trump liable for sexually abusing, which is a very broad term, and defaming Carroll, defaming her because he said, this is insane, you are insane. The jury rejected her rape claim, but found Trump liable for a lesser degree of sexual abuse. And again, in a case like this, it is his word against her word. Who do you think a deranged leftist jury is going to side with when all of the evidence they are allowed to admit into court is one-sided? And you know it's all a scam when the jury verdict from January 2024 trial was $83 million in additional damages. It was simply a witch hunt. You are watching all the Trump scandals go away, all the Trump trials, all these suits. Everything is getting dropped. Everything is getting deleted. They're not going after Trump anymore because it is all unfounded. And when he gets into the White House, when Gates gets into the DOJ, they will be looking into this. And they had better go after all these corrupt district attorneys, these corrupt lawyers for making up everything about Trump. All right, we're moving on from E. Jean Carroll. We talked about the hush money case getting, on Twitter they're saying dismissed. There's a bit of a difference between dismissing and adjourning the case. They're going to adjourn it today. They're just going to punt it down the road. When we're not talking about it, they'll quietly dismiss it altogether because, again, it's unfounded. All right, let's see if we have any more E. Jean Carroll here. Scrolling through the BBC. Yeah, Trump said, and this is why he got defamed, it's an appeal of a ridiculous verdict of a woman I've never met. Trump is standing by those claims. And again, E. Jean Carroll, they're going back to the 80s and 90s to talk about something bad that happened. The 80s and 90s. Trump's built an entire career, an entire political career. None of this ever came up until 2022. Again, ask yourself, what is the motive? And if the motive sounds like it is politically charged, then you are onto something. So now let's get into Brett Kavanaugh. We were just kids in 2018. We had no idea just how bad it was. We got a taste of it in 2018. But these Brett Kavanaugh hearings, these were ridiculous. I think most people have forgotten just how bad these hearings were, the trial that he was put on, these basic accusations, not just from the main Christine Blasey Ford, just insane lady, but there were two others. There was a Deborah Ramirez, there was a Julie Swetnick, and they all had the same story. Something bad happened in the 1980s, and I'm going to come forward now, even though Brett Kavanaugh has been in the political eye since the 1990s. I had to go to his Wikipedia page. Just take a listen to this. He clerked as early as the 1980s on the U.S. Court of Appeals. He was part of the associate counsel for Ken Starr that looked into Bill Clinton's misconducts and misdeeds in the White House. He was in the Bush White House. He was then later appointed U.S. Circuit Judge, where he served for 12 years before getting nominated to the Supreme Court. Just that timeline alone. This is not some man that's living a quiet life at a private practice, doing legal stuff. This was a man in the Bush White House. This was a man on the U.S. Court of Appeals. No allegations ever came forward until right before he was nominated to the Supreme Court. That should make you scratch your head. Let's get to some clips, though. I think in no particular order. It's the Kamala Harris ones, though, where she's talking to Kavanaugh that are truly remarkable. This is when you knew you hated Kamala Harris. In front of his family, in front of his kids. We have another clip of him breaking down in tears, if you remember that one. But again, Brett Kavanaugh, public spotlight for a long time, very prominent in politics in Washington, D.C., right before he goes to the Supreme Court. Then suddenly we hear about that. Not sketchy at all.
Morning. I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
To serve.
This is the opening moment of the entire hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where they would listen for 4 days, I think it was. Every senator has a chance on the committee to ask questions. Kavanaugh has a chance to respond, has his statements. This is Chuck Grassley, who was chairing the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time. And he's saying, welcome, we're going to get started. And do you notice who you're listening to? It is Kamala Harris, a freshman senator from California, butting in before they even have a chance to start.
Serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question before we proceed.
Regular order, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review.
Did you catch that? The day before the hearing was set, they suddenly learned all this stuff about Brett Kavanaugh. Amazing timing, just amazing timing.
Or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very warm welcome to Judge Kavanaugh.
It's worth pointing out, too. Remember when Nancy Pelosi said, we don't know what's in the Affordable Care Act, all these tens of thousands of pages? We'll just have to pass it to see what's in it. It's amazing how when it helps Democrats, just pass it. Who cares if you have a time to look through all the documents? But when it comes to Democrats on the other side, hold on a second now. We have 42,000 pages that we haven't had a chance to read through. Double standard much?
Opportunity to have a meaningful
his wife,
hearing on
Ashley.
this nominee.
Their 2 daughters.
Mr. Chairman,
Their
I
extended
agree with my
family and
colleague,
friends.
Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman,
Judge
we
Kavanaugh's
received
many law
42,000
clerks
documents that we haven't
and
been able
everyone else
to
joining us
review last
today.
night, and we believe this hearing should
I
be
know this is an
postponed.
exciting day for all of you here,
Mr. Chairman.
and you're rightly.
I'll say one more thing, then we'll stop this clip. Donald Trump, he's not presidential. Donald Trump, this isn't how the office is supposed to work. Or look at all the chaos that Donald Trump brings to Washington. Where were those comments when this was happening? Chuck Grassley can't even get in his opening remarks just saying, welcome everybody, with all of these lunatic leftists. Kamala Harris, I think that sounded like Mazie Hirono, I'm not positive. Where is the decorum that they always tell us we should have in politics? Politics was so nice before Donald Trump. These people are insane. These people are cutting him off. They're shouting, they're screaming, they're interrupting the proceedings. I think we've got a clip of shutting down an official proceeding. Remember when people were put in jail because they interfered with an official proceeding to count the electoral votes? Brett Kavanaugh's hearing was disrupted multiple times, not just by these Democrat senators, but by actual protesters. They walked into the room and had to be shut down. They had to be marched out. That was an official proceeding. Nothing ever happened to them. And again, I said double standard earlier. Worth repeating, it is never a double standard. It is simply hierarchy. They don't stand on any principles. They have no values other than obtaining power. If it suits their needs, they will interrupt these proceedings all day long. But then when it comes to the other side, if it is Trump supporters, America First movement, if they interrupt an official proceeding, then that's bad. Again, not a double standard, just hierarchy.
Proud
Mr. Chairman,
of
if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
the American people.
Yeah, let's adjourn the meeting before it even begins. These people are insane. We got more clips.
And then, do you agree that it is possible for men to both be friends with some women and treat other women badly?
Of course, but the point I've been emphasizing, and that is if you go back to age 14 for me, you will find people, and not just people, lots of people who I've been friends with, some of whom are in this room today, starting at age 14, women, and who talked about my friendships with them through my whole life, and it's a consistent pattern all the way through. 65 women who knew me more than 35 years ago.
If you're watching the video, just look at Kamala Harris's face. This woman is despicable. I don't know how else to describe Kamala Harris. The fact that people voted for her is alarming and it's disgusting and it is disappointing, but she does not care what he has to say. She was up there for her grandstanding to make a name for herself. This woman would gladly ruin anyone's life to get ahead. Just watch her.
Signed a letter to support me after the allegation was made because they know me and they were with me and we grew up together. We talked on the phone together and we went to events together. That is who I am.
They're making Kavanaugh defend himself from baseless accusations. And I didn't say this yet. You need to go back and realize that they accused him of gang raping a woman. Gang raping a woman. They accused him of the most awful activities, gang rape, and then the other two are a little watered down. That was just exposing himself to them. But the main charge levied against Brett Kavanaugh was lining some woman up and participating in a train of rape. That is what they accused him of doing. Kamala Harris, when she's there with her fake, concern, oh, Brett Kavanaugh, can you be nice to one woman and then gang rape another one? That is what she's asking right here, beyond the pale. And so Brett Kavanaugh, this is what it devolved into. They went back to his middle school days. Brett Kavanaugh, when you were 14, did you do this or say this? They made it that you will never be allowed to forget anything in your past. If you are a kindergarten student, what's stopping them from saying, well, one time in kindergarten, you did this, or you looked at the teacher, you made a comment to a friend, you are now disqualified. They had to go back to high school, to middle school. And how ridiculous that Brett Kavanaugh even had to say, look, if you go back to when I was 14, I've had good relationships with girls. Of course he has. Of course he has. Kamala Harris doesn't care, though. She just wanted to ruin his life.
what they've said, what the people who worked with me in the Bush White House, the women there. Look at what Sarah Day said in centralmaine.com. Look at what the law clerks.
Yeah, she doesn't care what he's saying right there. Yeah, I'm going to be so concerned about your testimony. You're not giving me the truthful account of that. It was beyond shameful. I think we have one more Kamala clip. Let's go to Brett Kavanaugh. So this is what they reduced him to at the end of it.
I intend no ill will to Dr. Ford and her family. The other night,
I did a show yesterday. I just pre-recorded it, dropped it on the Rumble channel, the American Tribune Live. I said I do not want unity with any of these demons. Brett Kavanaugh took the high ground. He said, I don't mean ill will towards this woman. This woman accused him of gang rape, and he's up there saying, I don't want ill will towards her. If I'm Brett Kavanaugh, I am crushing her. I am going after her and saying, how dare you levy these charges against me, these baseless accusations? You are dragging me and my family through the deepest mud possible. But he says, I mean her no ill will. They ruined him. They absolutely ruined him. We'll play the Tucker Carlson clip next, but this might have been a strong man walking into the hearing, and what he endured. We can't even show all 4 days of the clips. That would be, it'd be 4 days of us listening to all the heinous attacks from these Democrat senators. They made the trial get pushed back so they could have a separate hearing just with Christine Blasey Ford and Brett Kavanaugh, so they could air all of those grievances, and then they could finally get back to the confirmation hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where then it would get passed along to the Senate chamber. Absolutely vile stuff here, but just listen to him talk. I don't mean her ill will. I'm a good man. Like, yes, you are a good man, Brett Kavanaugh. The fact that you had to even say that, and that Kamala Harris and others like her didn't care that you were saying that, didn't believe you anyways, they attacked him on baseless, unfounded claims, willing to ruin his life simply for power.
Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman. It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old. We mean no ill will. First, let's start with my career. For the last 26 years, since 1992, I've served in many high-profile and sensitive government positions, for which the FBI has investigated my background 6 separate times. 6 separate FBI background investigations over 26 years, all of them after the event alleged here. I have been in the public arena and under extreme public scrutiny for decades.
Sounds like what I said, right? It's weird how no one ever found this before. The FBI investigated him, the corrupt FBI, it's worth mentioning. He's been in the public eye before. And then the day before his hearing is set to take place, suddenly you have this lunatic Christine Blasey Ford come out and say, this happened. He raped me. And then that encouraged other women to come out and say, he did something untoward towards me as well. And now Brett Kavanaugh had to deal with all of it. And look, I just accused all these other people of fake crying. This is genuine crying here. He knows that his family is ruined. His family has been ruined here. His poor kids had to watch their dad get utterly destroyed by these soulless ghouls led by Kamala Harris, but absolutely disgusting here. And this is the Supreme Court Justice nominee, now confirmed, crying because of what he has had to endure. And you know what? I don't actually blame him for this. He did not sign up for that.
In 1992, I worked for the Office of Solicitor General in the Department of Justice. In 1993, I clerked on the Supreme Court for Justice Anthony Kennedy. I spent 4 years in the Independent Counsel's Office during the 1990s. That office was the subject of enormous scrutiny from the media and the public. During 1998, the year of the impeachment of President Clinton, our office generally, and I personally, were in the middle of an intense national media and political spotlight. I and other leading members of Ken Starr's office were opposition researched from head to toe, from birth through the present day. Recall the people who were exposed that year of 1998 as having engaged in some sexual wrongdoing or indiscretions in their past. One person on the left even paid $1 million for people to report evidence of sexual wrongdoing, and it worked. He exposed some prominent people. Nothing about me.
Nothing about him. Imagine that. Imagine that for a second. Absolutely disgusting what they did to him. Let's see if we have, I don't know if we have a clip of the protest in there, but the insurrection, the interrupting of an official proceeding, that was fine when it was Brett Kavanaugh's hearing. We don't have a clip of that one. Let's go to Tucker Carlson. I don't mean to go after Brett Kavanaugh now. That's not the point of the show, but I'm showing this clip just to make a point that it's all intentional. They knew, even if they didn't get his nomination reversed, because Trump was going to nominate people that you could say he was going after Roe specifically. I take the higher approach for saying he was just appointing conservative justices because the woke Supreme Court was ruling against the Constitution all the time. I still don't understand how you can be a Democrat and then pretend to uphold the Constitution when those two things are competing ideas. Either you love the Constitution or you're a Democrat. You can't be both. And so, yes, Donald Trump needed to get justices that would uphold the Constitution. If it weren't Brett Kavanaugh, it would be somebody else. But then here is the other point. They probably didn't care if he got confirmed or not because they knew they'd be up against someone else anyways. And notice that when it was Amy Coney Barrett, it was Neil Gorsuch. We didn't do the same thing, but Gorsuch went first, Kavanaugh went next, and the left recognized that the Supreme Court was going to tilt in conservative favor. This was the end result, though. Listen to Tucker Carlson break down what Kavanaugh's tenure has meant since that hearing. They broke him. They literally broke him. Afraid to stand up to the leftist mob.
So this week, as we told you, the Supreme Court overturned Joe Biden's lunatic vaccine mandate for private companies that have over 100 employees. That's obviously a win for sanity. But at the same time, the court left in place Biden's mandate for medical workers. Think about that. In other words, the Supreme Court just affirmed that politicians in Washington somehow know more about health than nurses in emergency rooms. That's absurd. How did that happen? Well, it happened for one reason, because Justices John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh sided with the Biden administration in alliance with the hard partisans on the court, like certified non-genius Sonia Sotomayor. No one who pays attention is surprised that John Roberts did this. Roberts' judicial philosophy consists of not offending the Washington Post, and has for years. But Brett Kavanaugh? Wasn't Brett Kavanaugh supposed to be a sincere conservative, a man of principle? That's what Lindsey Graham told us. Unfortunately, many of us believed it. We certainly did. When Brett Kavanaugh cried during his confirmation hearings, wept like Adam Kinzinger, we felt sorry for him. We didn't understand at the time that something had broken inside of Brett Kavanaugh, that on some level his tormentors now controlled him, and that going forward he'd be more loyal to conventional opinion than to the Constitution of the United States. Our mistake. To the court's actual conservatives, the ones who don't weep in public, Kavanaugh's position on the vax mandate made no sense at all. As Clarence Thomas put it in his dissent, nothing in law or in the Constitution requires nurses to, quote, choose between losing their livelihoods and acquiescing to a vaccine they have rejected for months. Well, exactly. In other words, Joe Biden's vaccine mandates have no legal authority. And without legal authority, the government can't force us to do anything.
Again, we're not trying to pile on Brett Kavanaugh, but here is where, even if they don't get you removed from your nomination, even if they don't get you out of position, they still make you afraid. Brett Kavanaugh was broken during the confirmation hearings. Tucker put it out so well. He was afraid after that. He would fall in line with what he called conventional wisdom, or just Washington, D.C. politics. I'm not going to think for myself or defend the Constitution. I don't want them to come after me anymore. I'm just going to stay in line, be quiet, not be recognized, not gone after. So the tactics work in two ways. Step one, get them out of there. But step two, control them afterwards. So it absolutely worked. That's why they do it. That is their playbook. They want to smear and ruin and then control. All right, then. We got one more to talk about. Clarence Thomas. This is where it all began. Clarence Thomas in 1991. We all remember. I was a pup back then. You can go back, though, and watch the hearings. You can read about it. Anita Hill accused him of all sorts of awful things. And of course, that story never added up. It didn't add up in the time. Polls from 1991 said that the majority of Americans believed Clarence Thomas over Anita Hill. But again, That was only part of the point, to smear and go after him. The other part of the point, though, was to just make a show, just to show that they could do it to you. And it didn't work with Thomas, but it worked with Kavanaugh, that even if you get through this, we have ruined you. We've dragged your name through the mud, and maybe we can control you after the fact here. Let's listen first, and we got some articles to read about Clarence Thomas talking about that years later.
Denied all of the allegations.
Oh, absolutely. From day one, it didn't happen. I mean, so if somebody makes a broad allegation against you, what would you do?
Well, if you're Donald Trump, you would call E. Jean Carroll insane, and they get sued for defamation to the tune of $88 million. They make it so you can't win. You've been accused of this, and if you deny it, boom, I'm going to sue you for defamation. But Clarence Thomas, yeah, what else are you going to do? I'm going to deny it because it didn't happen. And I love, this is Tim Russert, the late Tim Russert. Just watch his response to this rhetorical question. What would you do if they accused you of sexual assault?
Ask him to prove it, I guess.
Yeah.
Was the Anita Hill that testified on the Hill the Anita Hill that you knew at EEOC?
She was not the demure, religious, conservative person that they portrayed. That's not the person I knew.
Who was the person you knew?
She could defend herself, let's just put it that way. And she did not take slights very kindly. And anyone who did anything, she responded very quickly.
Didn't take 10 years.
It didn't take 10 minutes.
When it came time for him to publicly respond to the...
All right, I've been making this point the entire show. I hope this is everyone's takeaway. If they don't come forward right away, you already have to smell something fishy. In the case of Trump's accusers, in the case of Kavanaugh's accusers, they waited decades, literal decades, to come forward. Even though these people had been in positions of power already, authority, public prominence, we're going to wait right before something big happens. You got nominated, so now I'm going to say that all this stuff happened. Clarence Thomas, look, she wouldn't wait 10 minutes. This was a strong woman. She would speak up. She knew her rights. Oh, but she waited till Clarence Thomas was nominated to the Supreme Court. Got it.
The allegations, Thomas turned the tables on his interrogators and, for all intents and purposes, ended the debate.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace.
Did you see who was leading the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time? Ding, ding, ding. Joe Biden was sitting as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee going after Clarence Thomas. It was Kamala Harris that was going after Brett Kavanaugh. And imagine that. They were our presidential nominees the last two cycles.
It is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Why did you use that language? I mean, why a high-tech lynching?
If somebody just wantonly tries to destroy you, if somebody comes in and just drags you out of your house and beats the hell out of you, what is it?
What do you want people to think about those allegations? What is it important?
I really, at this point, I think most well-meaning people understand it for what it was. It was a weapon to destroy me. Clear and simple.
Yes, it was a weapon. It has always been a weapon. That's when they opened the playbook, and that's what we've seen ever since then. So you could argue that Clarence Thomas's hearing is when it all began. I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. They made it so public. They made it so heinous. None of it was believable. None of it was credible. But that doesn't matter, because half the country, they can convince that, oh, look, Clarence Thomas is bad. He's nominated by a Republican. He's going to be a conservative justice, so we better get worried about him and his deeds in the past. Simply stunning stuff here. But yes, Joe Biden was on the Senate Judiciary. Kamala Harris was leading the charge against Brett Kavanaugh. Weird how that works. I got some things to read, though. This is from the Federalist as well. There is at least some honest reporting out there. So this is going back in time. Now, let's see where we can start reading from this one. So despite Americans' low opinion of the media, repeatedly advanced narrative can still take its toll. And so they're referring to the fact that, oh, there were these allegations against Clarence Thomas. We should always wonder what Clarence Thomas did. When Anita Hill first testified in 1991, almost 60% of those listening believed Thomas, with fewer than a quarter saying they trusted Hill's story. 24% of people at the time believed Anita Hill. Just a year later, those numbers had shifted to 44% for Thomas and 34% for Hill. And they have done movies since then. They have beaten you over the head for the last 30 years now, where there is more credibility to Hill's story today than there was at the time. And the only thing that has changed is how the media portrays it. Do you think if Clarence Thomas were a Democrat, one, would he have faced these allegations at all? And number two, would the media have gone after him that way? Absolutely not. I've got a fascinating quote from Anita Hill in just a second. Also worth mentioning, I was in the government school system as an assistant principal prior to switching over to the American Tribune, where I can actually say things that I believe rather than stifling my voice because I had bills to pay and a family to support. I don't have to worry about that anymore, thank goodness. Every February, the government schools love to promote Black History Month. It is everywhere. They make posters. They make kids research every Black person that is approved by the government. Not once have I ever seen, nor do I think I will ever see in the government school system, a poster of Clarence Thomas, the second ever Black Supreme Court Justice. Wouldn't you, if you were being honest about celebrating Black achievement and Black accolades, if we're going to do this nonsense, rather than just celebrating Americans and their achievements and their success stories, rather than saying, look, kids, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, you can all strive for this. Now, not everyone's going to be a Supreme Court justice. It is delusional to think, hey, what do you want to be, 10-year-old? You want to be president of the United States? Let's make it happen. Like, that's just not going to happen. But you can still have role models and someone to look up to and aspire to and say, okay, what did Clarence Thomas do? How did he work his way up from nothing to sit on the Supreme Court? Maybe there's a lesson in his life story. I've never seen a poster of Clarence Thomas. I've never seen a single student read about Clarence Thomas. I checked the school libraries. There were no books on Clarence Thomas. In Black History Month, you have one of the most prominent and successful Black Americans, and not a word. Not a word. But let's take a listen to Anita Hill here. I'm just going to read the headline. This is great. Clarence Thomas fraudster Anita Hill can't figure out why people don't trust harassment accusations. This was written in 2020. And yeah, no wonder you keep throwing these sexual assault charges out against people. Uh-oh, they've been nominated for something. I better go after Kavanaugh. I better go after Hegseth. I better go after Gates. I better go after Donald Trump. Do you wonder why we don't trust them anymore? Do you wonder why the Stacey Williams story disappeared so quickly? It's because we don't buy it anymore. We're not even willing to listen to it anymore. And that's what they've done. Now, if something serious happened, that is a problem because we should be listening to accusations. We should be making sure we understand, did something bad happen? Did something not happen? But when it is so politically motivated, when you can see the motive so clearly, of course we're not going to take it at face value. And Anita Hill, like I said earlier, had a fantastic quote about the political motives here. We got to find the right paragraph. I don't think it was in that article. Yeah, we got to find this because this was perfect. Here we go. I'm going to read this paragraph. Anita Hill defended the accused if they were Democrats. There you go. That's all you need to know about Anita Hill. If it's a Republican, I'm going to go after them. If it's a Democrat, I'm going to stay quiet. Take a listen to this paragraph. Just a few years later, however, on Meet the Press, Hill was defending President Bill Clinton, a Democrat, against serious claims of sexual harassment and assault from Paula Jones and Kathleen Willey. Those are just two of the many women that have accused Bill Clinton of misconduct. On Clinton's conduct, Hill stated, "We have to look at the totality of the presidency and how he has been on women's issues generally." Okay, let's keep going. When Tim Russert asked if this was a double standard for a liberal as opposed to a conservative, Hill shockingly said, "We live in a political world, and the reality is there are larger issues other than just individual behavior. And as the Federalist writes, you can't make this stuff up." I asked rhetorically earlier, what if Clarence Thomas had been a Republican? Imagine a Black Supreme Court justice nominated by a Democrat president who, let's just say they had real skeletons in the closet. Do you think the Anita Hills of the world would have gone before the Senate Judiciary Committee, gone in front of the entire world and said, this Black Supreme Court justice nominee appointed by a Democrat did horrible things to me? Do you think Anita Hill would do that? Well, according to Anita Hill specifically would not, because you have to look at the totality of the political situation. This is how you know it's a fraud. If they're only going to go after you because of the R or because of your conservative constitutional leanings, then you are not credible already. But it's a fascinating quote from Anita Hill herself, who would be willing to brush over real sexual grievances if it furthered her political aims and the aims of the political party to which she was attached. I mean, we could debunk the entire thing from Anita Hill. We can read more from the Federalist. They have other entire articles on this just to clear up the air about how much of a fraud Anita Hill was and how much of a sham the entire hearing process was. Interesting here as well, if you were listening to the Anita Hill story today, you might hear that, well, where were the other women testifying? Why was it just Anita Hill? Wasn't this widespread? That's what the media wants you to believe. They want you to think that The deck was stacked against Anita Hill and the female accusers just to push Clarence Thomas through. But then you would ask yourself, why would Joe Biden, the Democrat chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, want to brush those complaints off? And you would be correct thinking that. There's a good reason to think he conducted the hearing in such a way as to give Hill every advantage, including leaving witnesses of highly dubious credibility who would have likely undermined her own off the roster. Joe Biden had a chance to bring other women forward, but because they were not credible witnesses, he didn't want to take the chance that their lack of credibility could further harm the already dubious credibility of Anita Hill. Again, we talk about how the media is going to cover this 30 years later. They want to frame this up as saying, well, where were the other women? Joe Biden, the Senate Judiciary Committee, Washington, D.C., they didn't want to have other women come forward. They just pushed Clarence Thomas through. That's the narrative today. Of course, that is not true. They intentionally left the other women off because they were even less credible than Anita Hill. So let's see here, scrolling for a little bit. So I got to read this. Again, most people, I am young. I was young when this happened. I think the average age in America is like 38. So half this country was just a child when this took place. You try to go back. There's so many stories in the news just today. How do you go back 30 years and cover stories like that? But worth reading this right here, just to remind you of how ridiculous the entire Clarence Thomas hearing was as well. Hill's story was hardly incontestable. Her testimony to the committee was markedly different and more salacious than what she had given to the FBI just days earlier. She changed key points of her narrative before and after a lunch recess. Do you think she was getting coached and told what to say so that it might harm the Clarence Thomas nomination? She spoke to the FBI in very simple terms, but then when she got on the stand in the hearing, it was much more salacious, as the Federalist writes. And there was a moment in the hearing when Joe Biden called for a recess, and she came back and gave a different account of what happened. Yeah, credible. Very credible when you have to change your story on the spot. After the date she claimed harassment had taken place, Hill followed Thomas to another office. That's interesting. Why would you follow them to another office if something bad happened? Routinely called him to exchange pleasantries. I don't know about you, but I would not be nice to someone that had assaulted me. And volunteered to drive him to the airport. Sounds like they were on friendly terms. Again, not something you would expect if someone had sexually assaulted you. Colleagues asserted that she had praised Thomas's nomination before accusing him. Also interesting. An office mate whom Hill denied knowing until she was forced to acknowledge familiarity under questioning. Did you catch that? Oh, I don't know this person. Oh, wait, never mind. I do. You caught me. Told the New York Times that the allegations were the result of Hill's unrequited sexual pursuit of Thomas, not the other way around. There you go. Just like Joel Greenberg, he's the guy we talked about when we were covering Matt Gaetz a little bit earlier in the show. Joel Greenberg asked Matt Gaetz for help. Hey, I had sex with a minor. Hey, I'm getting investigated for tax fraud. Can you help me out, Matt Gaetz? Matt Gaetz said no, and here come the charges. Again, these are allegations, but someone who worked with Hill and Clarence Thomas said that Thomas didn't go after her, she went after him, but because it was unrequited, because Thomas was married already, not interested in Anita Hill because he said no to her. Now she's a disgruntled female who got turned down, and now she is seeking vengeance against him. Imagine all of that. And we're supposed to believe that she is a credible witness. Despite Americans' low opinion of the media, okay, we read that paragraph. Okay, I think we read this paragraph as well, but pretty stunning stuff here. I'm going to read this paragraph, or this sentence as well, from the Federalist. This is from a separate article. Again, we did a lot of diving to get into this story here, but Hill shocked the world nearly 29 years ago this week when she emerged in the 11th hour of the confirmation hearing as Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas to accuse him of sexually harassing her a decade earlier. Doesn't that sentence summarize the entire show today? She emerged in the 11th hour, and it happened over a decade ago. Where were you the entire time? You say bad thing happened here. You follow him to the office. You exchange pleasantries. You offer to drive him to the airport. You apparently wanted to seek him out in some sort of relationship, and he turned you down. And then a decade later, right as he's nominated, now I have hurt feelings. Now this thing happened, and I'm going to say it at the last second to try to derail your confirmation to the Supreme Court. This is, folks, the playbook. This is what Democrats do. They will go after you if you are a Republican, and as we laid out the Anita Hill quote right here, they won't say anything if you're a Democrat because the cause. You've got to be committed to the cause. Bad things can happen to women if it promotes the cause. Tara Reid is quite a credible accuser of Joe Biden. She alleges that things happened in his Senate staff room office while she was an aide to him in the 1990s. Even if it's not credible, you would have to ask yourself, why aren't we giving Tara Reade a larger platform? We let Kamala Harris and every Democrat destroy Brett Kavanaugh. We let Anita Hill go up there and try to destroy Clarence Thomas. We let E. Jean Carroll, Stormy Daniels, all these other women go after Donald Trump. We let Pete Hegseth, again, we covered Hegseth first. There's no story there. There's no denying what happened. It's just the regret case here, or the political opportunism to say, oh, I actually didn't want to do that. I didn't want to walk him to his hotel room. I had no idea what would happen. I totally wanted to go into his hotel room with him, but nope, that was rape by Hegseth. Tara Reade has never had a moment to discuss this. You've got stories of Ted Kennedy, who female staffers knew not to get on elevators with when he was the lion in the Senate. Ted Kennedy let a woman die in his car. He murdered someone, but that's okay. They don't treat women poorly. It's just all of these conveniently Republican nominees that have bad things happen. Only they go after women in a bad way. Democrats are the champion of women. Like I said, unless you do something to them, you let them die in your car, then nothing to see here. Bill Clinton, how many women have gone after him? But as Anita Hill said, that's okay, Bill. I'm going to give you a pass because politics. Pretty incredible stuff here. Let us see if we have any more clips that we are going to show you here. Oh, speaking of Tara Reade, I forgot we had this one. Here's Nancy Pelosi actually getting asked about Tara Reade. This is perfect. So Nancy Pelosi gets asked about Tara Reade. She gets asked about, I think this was during the Kavanaugh hearings. See if you can spot the difference.
The investigation on Justice Kavanaugh when a very similar allegation came out on him.
Well, let me just say, I respect your question, and I don't need a lecture or a speech.
We're here to show our respect for all women who have a case, have it respected, for due process.
Just respect it. Me too.
Investigate, to find the truth, not fear it.
Here's the thing. I have complete respect for the whole Me Too movement. I have 4 daughters and 1 son, and there's a lot of excitement around the idea.
One of those daughters is a filmmaker who just happened to be at the Capitol building on January 6th, by the way, and recorded everything going down. Weird.
Idea that women will be heard and be listened to.
But what's happening here has lifetime impacts. The crimes themselves, the allegations that have been made are about offenses that have a lifetime impact.
There is also due process, and the fact that Joe Biden is Joe Biden.
There's an allegation made against a person. An allegation, as I said before, that has lifetime impact on a person to be violated in that way by a person who wants a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court.
There's been statements from his campaign, or not his campaign, but his former employees who ran his offices and the rest, that there was never any record of this.
Instead of asking questions, the Republican leadership fears the truth.
There was never any record, and that nobody ever came forward, or nobody...
Really? They're so afraid of the truth, and they're so afraid of a woman, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, for the truth that she will tell.
I am so proud. The happiest day for me this week was to support Joe Biden for President of the United States.
I joined Leader Schumer in calling for Judge Kavanaugh to withdraw his name from consideration.
He's a person of great integrity, a great concern for the American people.
The Judiciary Committee and the Senate decide to go forward. They have to know that they are having a demoralizing impact and a chilling effect on the entire movement of courageous women who are telling their stories and demanding justice.
He authored the Violence Against Women Act when he was the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the 90s.
So there are 2 equities to be weighed. One equity is the integrity of the Supreme Court. The other equity to be weighed is the respect that we have for women when they come forward.
Interesting. She sounds just like Anita Hill. Oh, you mean Joe Biden was accused of that? That's a baseless claim. I trust Joe Biden. He's a man of integrity. So much integrity, going after women, abusing his position of power, selling out the country for millions of dollars. So much integrity from Joe Biden. But when Brett Kavanaugh gets accused. Republicans are afraid of the truth. How could we dare nominate Brett Kavanaugh with all these salacious details in his past? We have to believe women accusers. Folks, I don't know what else to tell you. Whenever you see accusations like this levied from a Democrat or from the media against a Republican, specifically an America First Republican or a constitutionalist, you should already be suspicious. And I hate that that's where we're at. Women that actually endure these horrific experiences, their experiences are now reduced to nothing because the left has weaponized all of these terms: rape, sexual assault, sexual misconduct. I already said racist and white supremacist, Nazi. Those words are meaningless as well. They have taken away from real experiences of women just in order to satisfy their own personal desires for more power and for crushing their political opponents. Stacey Williams is the best example, though. They tried, they failed. No one believes it anymore. They're running out of women in this country, I think, to pay off and come forward and say, hey, something bad happened against this Republican. But I think that's going to do it for us today. We are, we're under an hour and a half. I think that's good for the show. We push 2 hours normally, but I appreciate you tuning in. Viewer count was up there. Let us know in the comments what you would like to see next. We are lining up some exciting guests. Stay tuned for those as we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30 Central. I think you're going to like who we have to hear from. But this is the American Tribune Live. If you're not watching on Rumble, I encourage you to go over there, search out the channel. It's a lot to type in. Go ahead and give us a follow. That's going to boost our ability to be seen by more people. And if you want to as well, I encourage you to go over to Rumble at the American Tribune, just the American Tribune. So we have 2 channels over on the free speech platform of Rumble. The American Tribune's where I drop commentary every single day, videos that we have written in articles at theamericantribune.com. This show specifically airs Tuesdays and Thursdays on the American Tribune Live with Todd Peterson as we build out the American Tribune Network. But I appreciate you tuning in. Share this video with people that still think all these allegations are real, that there's no political motive, there's no financial motive. These are all genuine women coming forward with real claims, and it's just a convenience. Nothing to see here, that all these claims always go one way. They get dredged up after decades in some cases, right as something big is going to happen to hurt the swamp. But thanks for tuning in. We will see you back on Thursday at 9:30 Central over here on Rumble at the American Tribune Live with Todd Peterson.